What's up everyone, Slasher Movies here, and with Resident Evil, the final chapter, currently out in theaters, I thought, why not? Let's rank this franchise from worst to best. Now look, I'm probably not the perfect guy to be ranking this franchise, but I did recently just marathon all these films leading up to the final chapter, and I have to admit, I'm not the biggest fan of this franchise, but there are films in this franchise that I did get a kick out of. So, my list might not be your list, but I definitely love to know them in the comment section below, and let's talk all things Resident Evil. And personally, starting my list off at number 6 in the worst spot, by God, it has to be Resident Evil Apocalypse. Please, can we all universally agree that this is a terrible movie? I might even go as far to say that this is one of the worst, action movies of the early 2000s. This movie is terrible. The script is cliched and boring, has no life to it, especially in the acting department. All the actors are just not interesting to look at. And honestly, the first Resident Evil had horror elements to it. It actually had some scary scenes in it. But this is just a straight up bona fide action movie. And I get that fans were upset that, the first film wasn't like the video game. But maybe, filmmakers shouldn't always listen to the fans. Because they try to shoehorn elements of the game into this and it feels completely out of place. The CGI that does not work with the great practical effects that are in this film. And the worst thing about this movie, by God, is the editing. This movie, maybe what could have been decent, but it is botched in the editing lab because there are way too many cuts going on in the editing to really understand what's happening in a lot of these sequences. Coming in at number 5, I have Resident Evil Retribution. This one honestly felt like Prison Break meets Saw. I can definitely see why a lot of people actually do like this installment, but for me, it just really felt pointless. And I get that these films haven't been really known for having plot, but this one only felt like it existed to be a bridge to the final chapter. But regardless of the matter, this film does actually offer some pretty great action set pieces. I love the one where Milla Jovovich is in this long hallway and she's having to go ham on some zombies. It is so well choreographed. It looked amazing in 3D, and I just really enjoyed some of the set pieces in this film. However, this movie totally underutilizes its cast. It tries to bring in back a bunch of fan favorites like Michelle Rodriguez, and she is completely wasted in this movie, and to the point I just wish that she didn't exist. And I have to admit, I'm a big Ali Larter fan, and I felt her absence big time in this installment. Coming in at number 4, I have Resident Evil The Final Chapter. Look, I think this movie is pure fan service. I think if you're a diehard fan of this film franchise, I think you're going to get a kick and have the time of your lives with The Final Chapter. I think there are some pretty great set pieces in this film. I think it does a great job of bringing closure to Alice's story and to everything she's been on. And I had a fun time, especially in the second half of this movie. But I will admit, the editing in this movie tanks this movie in my opinion, and I can't quite give it a passing rating just because of the editing. It is so botched. There's so many cuts. I mean, there's this action sequence where Milla is hanging upside down, and I swear I counted maybe like 30 or 40 cuts in that one scene. It was so bad that I couldn't understand what was happening, and I was like, you could have done this so many other ways. And I know Paul W. Anderson can at least shoot an action sequence, so I don't know what was going on, but it was very, very distracting. But regardless, I do think there's some good bloody set pieces, and I definitely think this movie definitely pays respect to the original film and has its heart in the right place. That besides the terrible editing and some wooden acting, I definitely think that this one is definitely for the fans, and they'll feel satisfied even if it's not the best installment. Coming in at number 3, I have Resident Evil, Where It All Began, ladies and gentlemen. This movie is just fun B-movie trash. I love the set pieces. I love the blood and the gore. I love the R rating that this movie had. It definitely owned it in my opinion. I love the introduction of Alice. I think Milla Jovovich kind of owns in this film. I do think this movie does suffer from some bland acting from some of the supporting characters, and it definitely overcooks the plot, but I'm also asking a little bit too much from this film, to be honest. Coming in at number 2, I have Resident Evil Extinction. Now look, I can see the love for the Resident Evil franchise, and a lot of people hailed this one as the best Resident Evil film, and I can see it. The desert wasteland is definitely a much needed change of scenery, in my opinion, in this franchise. I love the sort of woman on the run type of vibe this movie has. It definitely feels like a hybrid of like The Walking Dead meets Mad Max, and I really dig that vibe quite a bit. I think the superpowered nature made some of the action sequences more grander and bigger and better. I love the crow sequence in this film. I think it's so entertaining, and it just has some really great in-your-face action sequences. I actually think this is a well-directed film. And of course, we've made it to the end. My favorite Resident Evil film, of course, is Afterlife. I know. I love this movie. I will actually defend this movie. And when people talk crap about the Resident Evil franchise, I'll admit I take a back seat on it, except for Afterlife. This movie actually feels like it's a video game, and I love that element to it. It's so much fun. All the action sequences are overly stylized. I love the sort of simple nature. It kind of reminded me of like Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives, where you get past the silly introduction of Alice having superpowers, and you know, it gets back to basic. When they get on that rooftop, everything else is just set piece after set piece after set piece of watching people die, of trying to get to this almost safe haven location, and I just find this movie thoroughly entertaining. I loved this movie when I saw it in the theaters in 3D. I thought the 3D element was really entertaining, and honestly, my favorite action set piece, still to this day, is that bathroom sequence. That bathroom sequence where Ali Larter and Mila Jovovich go against this big massive dude is so entertaining. It looked amazing in 3D. I love the overly stylized nature. It feels like it comes from the mind of these horny teenage boys, and I think this movie's thoroughly entertaining. So you guys, there you have it. That was my definitive ranking of the Resident Evil franchise. Let me know in the comment section below your definitive ranking. I'm sure it looks a lot different than mine. And until next time, you guys, I'm the Slash Movie Reviewer, and you guys have just been slashed.